Effective date.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, Andy, I'm going to pass it down to you on this, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Since we moved into this building, we've had a company called CSI has been doing our cleaning services and did a real good job for us, but we came to the end of that contract. Last year, we went out to bid, and CSI was the second lowest price respondent. We had somebody else who came in with a lower price, so we awarded the contract to them. We moved forward with the new vendor. They've, in short, I'll say, have done a horrible job, including a very serious security breach a couple of weeks ago. So we fired them immediately. And so what staff would like to do is go back to CSI, who was our previous vendor and was the second lowest price when we went out to bid on this again. So we're asking you to formalize that and let us go back to our previous vendor. Thank you.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing no public comment closed. Any questions up here? We're all good? Call the question, please.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Councilmember Fisickelli,
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brighters,
Yes.
Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Number 10, please.
A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, authorizing the release of Core Civic, Inc., formerly known as Corrections Corporation of America, Inc., from that certain letter of credit relating to the construction of the Southwest 202nd Avenue improvements now that the town is the owner of the property, and further providing that the future construction of improvements shall be performed in accordance with those standards of the Broward County Highway Construction and Engineering Division, and providing an effective date.
Anyone?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment closed. Richard, you don't have anything to add on this one, do you?
Nope.
Okay. All right. You want to ask Andy?
Yeah, well, I think just for the public's benefit, I think we need to have a little bit of an explanation on this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd be happy to explain this. When CCA originally purchased that property out west I believe it was in the late 90s, part of their sales agreement included, they bought the property from Bergeron, and Bergeron was required to put in a road to provide access to the property. CCA purchasing that property had to put up a line of credit with the county for that road. CCA is no longer the owner of the property. The town has purchased that property. We are the owner of that property. And so what we're doing here by this resolution is actually releasing CCA from that line of credit, but not releasing Bergeron from their obligation to build the road at whatever future date it becomes necessary. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Andy, and I apologize, just came to mind. How do we speed up Bergeron building the road? Is there a mechanism to do that, or do we have to, part of the sales?
I think it's just a question, when the property is being developed, that will trigger the requirement to have the roadway
We
done.
have water and sewer.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you want to call the question?
Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Councilmember Fisickelli,
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brighters,
Yes.
Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Discussion item on residential commercial businesses. I'm going to pass this to Steve, I think, to start off, if that's okay.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Surely.
This is an item that several residents of the town brought to me to bring up for discussion, and I mentioned at the last meeting that we would start pursuing this, and I appreciate the support of the board and the council in at least looking into this.
Talk closer to your mic.
I don't know. It's right there. So what I wanted to do was have the opportunity tonight to open up the floor, get some resident feedback on this. But let me give you a little bit of what I'm hearing and what I think the direction of this should be. I want to be clear that this is not. So what this is commercial businesses that are going on in our town. So what I'm not hearing complaints about and what is not an issue are small businesses, accountants, or people that have their own business in their own house with little impact. The areas where I am hearing impact and issues with are larger, really commercial establishments that are operating in our town. You know, generally speaking, commercial establishments are in commercial areas and they get taxed accordingly. And there's a reason why they pay more in taxes. It's because they generate a lot more expense. They generate traffic on the roads. They generate additional waste. They generate, you know, everything from more water and sewer to, you know, everything about them generates more expense. They generate usually more cost as far as public services like police and fire. So for all those reasons, they generally pay commercial taxes for that, and they're in commercial districts where the roads are sufficient to handle it and all the elements are there in place. But in our town, there's a lot of commercial businesses that operate out of their house that have a lot of vehicles, that they may have numerous employees all driving to the house, getting into vehicles, and then all driving out, and then in the evening all driving back in and getting back to their vehicles, and then all driving back out again. There are situations where they have manufacturing or other type of businesses there where they bring in large amounts of material that they then manufacture, and then it's shipped out, and all that material that's brought in goes out as residential waste, which then goes against everybody in town, their cost for residential waste pickup. It should be segregated. In my opinion, it should be segregated and go into a commercial disposal unit that the commercial unit would then pay for. In fact, that's already on the books. It's supposed to be that way, but there's little way to enforce it, and so it rarely gets come into play. So there's other situations where there are, you know, all kinds of businesses, whether it's movers or roofers or whatever, where there's a number of vehicles that are in town. There's situations where multiple vehicles come into town, and the house itself isn't a business per se for those vehicles. They're just renting the space for these other vehicles to come in and park and then leave. So you know, all of these things are going on in our town. They are an impact, a serious impact, I believe, on our rural lifestyle and what we really are designed to be here in Southwest Ranches. You know, we're designed to be an agricultural rural community, not a hotbed of commercial establishments because, you know, we don't have all the elements to enforce it. So those are some of the comments that I've heard. Those are some of the things that I've experienced firsthand. And so that's why I wanted to have this time for discussion tonight. I would love to hear from residents that have an interest in this area. I know I had 2 residents that contacted me about this that were, I had many residents, but I had 2 that were,
George, you're late.
that were, you know, specifically wanted to speak on it that are not able to be here tonight, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a good discussion regardless. So, and welcome any thoughts from the
I would
council as
like
well.
to bring up Robert with Code Enforcement briefly
That'd be
to
great.
give a little bit of what the code is now and kind of where we are.
Good evening, everyone, and wanted to take a couple of minutes, if I may. First of all, to thank you all for the support that you provide us with, and to the fact of the kind words that you provided just before. Code enforcement, like you mentioned, is a very difficult job. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't kid around when I say 30 years. First Miami-Dade County, Sonny Isles, a number of other locations. It is very difficult. Nobody likes code enforcement. The problem is when you have a resident and then you have a roofing company next to you, which has 15 employees, which may not be the best employees or people you want to have around. And you have an underage kid which walks to the school, and then you find this issue. And then code enforcement is very important. We are here, in my opinion, to educate more than enforce. And that's the idea behind the town council's, mindset, and that's what has been given to us, where we are reactive instead of proactive. We have a number of codes which are in effect right now, which you all passed, which we don't enforce unless somebody calls. Unfortunately, as the mayor indicated, if we receive a call, we have to answer the call. We have to go out. If there is a call violation, which is in the books, unfortunately, we have to address it. We try our best to work with everyone, providing extensions, providing time, providing education, trying to work the situation and try to resolve the issue without having to impose any fines. It is a misconception that, we enforce fines that go up to $300,000 or $200,000. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Code enforcement is not a production of money. It should be one that provides citizens with the help necessary to make sure that property values remain the same and they're not affected by the fact that others do not follow the rules. But beyond that point, and if I may, like I mentioned before, we have Article 45, which is agricultural and rural districts. And that article encompasses anything that is agriculture and anything that is not agriculture. And when I say agricultural, are those places which perhaps operate as agricultural, but they do not have the exception from the county. And the exception for the agricultural exemption from the county provides them with more leeways than all the locations which they don't have. And the code is in place. We have a code for the amount of vehicles that are allowed on those locations, agriculture or not. We have a code in place for the items that can be sold from the locations. We have a code against staging in locations, as Vice Mayor indicated, where we have nurseries where there's 20 or 30 vehicles which are just being staged. Basically, they go from there to do the labor, to cut grass on somebody's house, not because they are providing anything to those locations from whatever they create, say like plants or what have you, that are grown on location. It's just a matter of going out and doing grass cutting for somebody else. We have commercial vehicles, as I mentioned before, requirements, cells, you name it. We have it in place. It's just a matter of that, again, like I said, we are reactive, not proactive. So perhaps tweaking on that and perhaps scenarios, for instance, and I mentioned to all of you in some way or formal way, one way or another, is to have nurseries which their certificate of use are done on a yearly basis. These are big enterprises, and we're not talking about the small businesses, as Vice Mayor indicated, of an air-conditioned guy, or perhaps somebody who's a doctor, or somebody who has a computer at home. But locations where you have a number of trucks that can be identified on a yearly basis as to whether they are there this year or whether they're more next year, what impact it's creating on the streets surrounding it. And that's one of the biggest issues out west in terms of traffic, 188, and a number of other locations. So perhaps a tweaking of the certificate of use, requiring perhaps for those nurseries to have to renew it on a yearly basis, so we have an inspection on a yearly basis. It's not a matter of making money, it's a matter of trying to find out what is the impact and how it changed from one year to the next. And I entertain any other questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody in the public want to come up and share some thoughts or ideas?
Newell Hollingsworth, 199th Avenue. I had a home business for many, many years and restoring historical homes and businesses. And I had a pickup truck, and it generally had a lot of stuff in the back of it. But it was one truck because I was one person. And what we have set up when we started our town was those that bring their trucks home for their business. And my business was at my house. That's where it was licensed. Those trucks are legal. And if my son had gone into business with me and he had a truck, that truck also would be legal. But if I hired a third guy and brought a third truck home, that truck is not legal. When you reach a certain point in a business, you need to have a staging area not at your home. There are certain exceptions on that under certain agricultural properties and agricultural work because of the number of pieces of equipment that are needed in agricultural work. But there's this fine line that sort of wiggles back and forth where you could have 2 or 3 sons working with you and therefore have 4 trucks at the house. Now, if the people, your crew, come and meet you at the house, that's wrong. They should meet at the McDonald's or some other place in the early morning in Publix parking lot, whatever. Because I met people that when I was picking them up and taking them to work. Never at my house. So we have that situation. The ones that are really egregious, where they've got 30 trucks and they're parking and they're renting a lot back there and everything else, and they got people living back there in travel trailers and all that sort of stuff. That's all illegal. We know that. There needs to be a way to find out those people, and maybe we could start the Southwest Ranches Air Force and get a couple of drones and a couple of Hellfire missiles too. But whatever. So, but I'm talking about that fine line where it's your business, your house, and it's your truck, and you're taking it and bringing it home. And also, when you work for a company, you bring the truck home. That's legal also. But when you get multiple trucks, that's where the problem is, and that's what we got to find what that line is and address that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Al. Take your time. Take your time. You'll get there.
Dealing with old age disease.
But you're
Vince
still,
Valletta,
you're still on this
Sunshine
side of the
Ranches,
grass.
Southwest Ranches. I brought this item up 16 years ago, and I was told at that time by the administrator that looked into it that it wasn't economically feasible. What makes it so prevalent now? Except we have additional residents. And as far as Mr. Hollingsworth, I always said if the product is grown on the property and it is not considered or shouldn't be considered a business. But when you got businesses like I got a cabinet maker down the street and lady selling potted plants. I don't know why it's so prevalent now, when I told you 16 years ago that we've had underlining businesses within the town of Southwest Ranches, and presumably people have found out that they could move here and have a business without having a home occupational license. So that's my question. How come it's so prevalent now?
I believe the answer is a lot more people are complaining.
Bob Hartman, 5441 Southwest 198th Terrace, also known as Bob Hartman Photography. I'm glad to see you're not going after the true small businesses. I mean, a lot of these guys that have 15 trucks in an AC business consider themselves small business too. But on my street, we've got an attorney. He practices out of his house. We've got a CPA, same thing. You know, have I never had a client come to the house for me to shoot pictures of my beautiful yard? I'd be lying. Dee's daughter I shot in my backyard. I mean, that's part of it. No different than, you know, around in April, a CPA is going to have some people come to the house. These days, it's all done on the internet, but still people will stop by. The same thing with the attorney. But the majority of my business is practiced in photography studios, public parks, not at my house. And I'm sure it's the same with the attorney as well. They don't hold court on 198th Terrace. But to your point, and it's a shame John Eastman's not here tonight, because if you drive down 188th, I believe there's a roofing company, which was used as an example. I know there's a couple of large landscape companies that don't park a truck or two in the backyard. There's 20 trucks. There's a guy that runs a business right off of Griffin Road that these businesses belong in a commercial or an industrial area. You drive through that quadrant down there by the turnpike in US 27, there's dozens of businesses where the guys come, they park in the morning, they take off in their trucks, they go do whatever it is they do, all the things we just named and 1,000 other things. They get back in, they get in their cars, and they go home. That place is geared towards it. My street is not. None of our streets are. I mean, if you live on Griffin Road, that's probably slightly different, but it's still a residential area. You know, I have a unfortunate situation where I live within earshot of Bergeron's Industrial Park. Can I have another minute? And on the weekends, I hear the shipping containers grating against each other. I hear stuff happening over at the Sadisco yard, the wrecking yard. Unfortunately, I live next to an industrial area, and there's nothing I can do about it. But when the guy on the next street is fixing boat engines all weekend long for hire, and he's got 15 boats parked in the yard because that's what he does, that's not conducive to residential living. That's not the right thing. So I don't want to come down on everybody, but there are certain businesses that, hey, if you got 15 trucks out there, you're making a couple of nickels. Go rent space in the appropriate place and do the right thing for your neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. We were not going to do licensing. That's not where you're headed, right?
That's
Okay, because there was a reason why they said
Suggestions.
it just was not economically feasible.
That's correct.
And most everybody that's in business has a license of some sort. Well, let me cut to the chase on this. I would imagine that most of this is geared towards the landscape companies predominantly, or somebody who has a lot of trucks and he's running his asphalt company out of there, or something of that nature.
Yep.
Out west more than in Sunshine Ranches. If there is anything in Sunshine Ranches, I doubt seriously if it'll stay there long because that is primo property for mansions. So I've seen a lot of them disappear in that area. I would say most of this is happening out west because either they're larger pieces of property that were nursery properties, or they're the 1 acre home sites predominantly on 188th, really. And they buy the house or they rent it, and then they put up a privacy fence and they load it up with whatever company they're doing. Most of them are landscape companies, and they drive in, park the cars, drive out with the landscape equipment. I mean, that can be stopped. We have laws. I am 110% against more laws. I really am. We have enough to enforce what they're breaking, the laws that they're breaking now.
I don't think we're looking at making any new ones. I think we're more discussing putting more on the hit list of upfront ones that are already on the books and enforcing them.
So that would be more people that you want to go after, the ones that are in extreme violation, because we do have it pretty clear. I mean, the comp plan worked very hard for a couple of years to make sure that we could be protected. For instance, horse trailers on these properties that have barns, or horses, they can have innumerable horse trailers. There's no limit to the number of horse trailers they can have on their property, or cars parked, because those are the people that are there to ride or, take care of their horses. Same thing for the nurseries, have a certain percentage of traffic that goes in and out, purchasing, or they move trees, big trees or whatever. But I think that this thing really boils down to the fact that we have a few, more landscape companies than anything, but we have a few other type of companies that are operating to excess. I mean, my grandson works on his airboat. If you listen to him, it brings back memories of when he revs up that motor to see if it's running. Like there's a 450, whatever they are, coming down the runway. I mean, that thing is really loud. He doesn't do it at 1 o'clock in the morning, but, you know, when this was brought up about the noises, you know, you have to be respectful. And he's not building them commercially. If somebody is building something commercially and they have 15 cars, then you got a problem. But I don't want to see any more laws. If you're going to go after the ones that are breaking the laws,
I don't think we're looking to make any. Don't worry.
don't allow a neighbor to report them. I'm sure you already know who they are, and just send code out there to enforce it, notify them, and shut it down. It's that simple. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? I want to tell a quick story. Like this council will probably remember it. I wasn't on the council at the time, but somebody moved into town and bought a $2 or $3 million house. They couldn't get code enforcement and do anything about the chickens next door that were roosting and howling at 3:30 in the morning. And they complained and complained and complained, and they were so mad nobody would do anything. They came to the council here and complained to the council and said, look, we spent $3 million on this brand new house. It's beautiful. We love it here. But the chickens next door start howling at 3:30 in the morning. They won't shut up. We said, well, the council told them, we're really sorry. We don't enforce, you know, farm noises and stuff. Do you guys remember that?
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Lived in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah, so we said, we're really sorry, we're not doing anything about it. And I don't know if they sold and moved or whatever, but that just gives you an example that we do stick up for the farming people. Come on up.
Does that mean I need to get more chickens and just put them all along my fence line where my neighbor is? Maybe that'll work.
I think they were talking about roosters at that time.
Oh,
It was
I'll get roosters, lots of them. And
Whatever it was, but it was noises.
And I'll feed them at like 4 in the morning.
Yeah, but it was roosters. They had, you know, like 30 of them, and it was like, what do you have 30 roosters for? No chickens. Come on.
Well, what I'd like to ask is I guess it would be more of a code question. It's been recommended to me, well, let me start off with, if you know the neighbor that's constantly calling code on you to the point where it's become almost harassment, it's actually been recommended to me to hire an attorney to get him to not harass me because he's coming to the town, and it is him, and getting the code to come after us. Is there anything in the town that protects our residents from neighbors who move in, who are the ones that are going to code and saying, you've got to go do this, do that, do this, do that?
You know, that's a partial legal question, but I would tell you my conversations I've had in the past with code, because it's been an issue of back and forth with people. And, you know, we said, look, we're not doing anything for either one of you anymore, to both parties, and said, you know, this is a civil matter. Go get yourself an attorney. So I can tell you that's happened in the past. I don't know where your situation's at the moment. I'm not going to give you any legal advice, but I would tell you that tit for tat code is not a tool to use back and forth kind of thing. Code is an issue that if there's really a problem, you deal with it, but because somebody has a problem, they're going to make a problem for the other person because you're calling on them or they're calling on you. So it actually turns into a civil matter under that scenario. But so I don't know the answer to that. I would tell you it never hurts to call an attorney and get advice. That's
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks for coming out to see us tonight, George. Appreciate it.
George, it's good to see you.
Glad you're still here. I have a little bit of problems with your code. I think we ought to abolish it or get it tamed down some. To go to a house and threaten somebody $500 if you don't get this moved and stuff, I think that's bad. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think you should go there and warn them, you need to do this or that, but you don't say, I'm going to I'm going to charge you $500 a day if you don't move that. I think that's wrong. And I got equipment that I worked in this town when it wasn't a town, it was county. And you could live and do whatever you want here. Then we made it a town. And now you get all these people moving in these $5, $6, $10 million homes. They don't want to hear chickens. They don't want to see cows. A cow got out the other day. Code enforcement called the owner and said, "Cow's out. You need to fix your fence." Run right over there and fix it before they ever called. Cows get out, horses get out, because this is Southwest Ranches. It's livestock. And if these people don't want to live with livestock, they shouldn't move in here. Behind my house, that was all dairy. There wasn't no houses. I had cow dogs that I worked the cows with. They'd bark when a coon or a cat come by. People are calling me next door. There's 80-foot or 90-foot canal plus another 100 or so feet to their house. The reason they called? Because in the wintertime, they roll their damn windows down. We don't have to pay for the air conditioning. And they hear the cows, the dogs. In the same way, my house, I don't hear no dogs. But I keep my windows up and I got the air conditioning on. And my neighbors the same way. I've got dump trucks and stuff at my place that I worked on all these houses out here in Southwest Ranches. And I never had any problem until the county said, "Can't have commercial vehicles on your property." And I said, "Well, you tell me what ranch that don't have commercial vehicles on it."
Go ahead.
You understand what I'm talking about? And I went to court on it, right? They tried to take an acre and a half away from me. Guess what? They lost. It's agriculture. And you're allowed to build a barn without a permit. You're allowed to put a septic tank in without a permit. You can do all these things, and it's there in the state. Get a piece of paper and you can read it. If you don't want to live with cows and horses and chickens, don't move out here. And these people, that's what they want to do. They come out because it's kind of urban, and then they go bananas and they want to call on you and do stuff. But I mean, it's not right, you know. And like when I was here, this was all wetland. Davie was all wetlands. And if you go to build on something, it's got a 25 or 30 foot little spot, and the road's 4 foot here and 4 foot there, and the two houses are 10 foot. They want you to pay $10,000 or $15,000 to get that mitigated. And I tell you what I did when I knew the town was taking over. I filled my whole 5.5 acres in because I knew exactly. You drop a load of dirt at one of these places and somebody don't like it, they call on you. It's just gotten to be, it's terrible here. This is agriculture. If it ain't agriculture, what do we need to be doing? These people are building these big old homes and they all got something to say about it. And it's just pure ridiculous. You've got a boat in your yard, you can't have it. When this was county, you could have many boats as you want there. Why move out here if you don't want this? You know, that's me. But it's the way things are. But the code enforcement, you need to get rid of it or tone it down, because you don't need to be threatened. And none of them need to go in your house. Let one of them come in my house to see what's going on in my house, and we're going to have major problem. You get a search warrant or warrant, then you can come in here, but you ain't going to come in here and look at my house. And I know this one girl out here, that's what they want to do, code enforcement. And that's bullcrap. And that's all I got to say.
Thanks, George. Go ahead.
Last fall,
John, you don't need to fill a form out. It's open comment.
Last fall, I spoke to plenty of neighbors, and one of the issues that I had spoke about code enforcement, I had tossed around an idea, and I guess this would be a time to express an idea that I had, is that when, first of all, I'm not a person who says go tattletale and go complain, and I guess some people, certain parts of their body are a little too tight. And I thought, well, why don't we have something, a prerequisite in the code enforcement to say, hey, have you tried to work this out with your neighbor? Because, you know, we're neighbors in the town. Have you tried to work this out, and has that resulted in a failure? And then code enforcement could come in and do something. That was just an idea that I had. Thanks.
Thank you. John, we're on the commercial vehicle stuff, so come on up.
We might even give you more than 3 minutes.
Thanks. Hi, John Eastman, 188th Avenue. My primary concern with code enforcement is when we allow a lot of commercial activity at private homes. Not only is it against the code, but it generates significant levels of commercial traffic on our neighborhood. I'm speaking specifically about the 188th, 185th, 190th region there, because I know that. Other parts of town have their own issues, and we have about 6 people on our street on 188th that operate full-time commercial businesses from their property. Now, the town's very lenient, allowing, commercial vehicles to come home at night with the driver, but that doesn't mean that they can operate these vehicles in and out all day long. And the neighbors don't like it. And I usually get the phone call, and I'm the bad guy who has to call code. I tell Robert, I'm just passing this through because the neighbor does not want to sign on the complaint, which is fine. I'm happy to do it. But we need some sort of proactive enforcement of commercial businesses operating out of single-family homes. Some people might operate a single-man business. That's fine because there's no impact. But when you have a company operating a roofing supply or, high-vac business with service trucks, deliveries, bulk waste, that sort of thing, it's way over the top. And that one home may be generating 30 to 40 trips a day on the road. Now, 188th is not a cut-through. It's a neighborhood. It's just like all the cul-de-sac neighborhoods in Weston, except we have a straight road. We're not gifted with the round road that keeps most of the through traffic out. But when we have those 5 or 6 bad apples on the street and, code ignores them.
Go ahead.
This is why we need a little proactive muscle